I would like to, first of all, acknowledge the presence of Honorable Christopher Bwalya Yaluma, Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry of Zambia, the presence of Honorable Manlio Di Stefano, Undersecretary of the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Dr. Carlo Ferro, President of the Italian Trade Agency, Dr. Bishop David Musonda Mazupa, Chairperson of the Zambia Development Agency, Mrs. Antonella Marucci, Director of the Italian Trade Agency in Johannesburg, Dr. Francesco Tilli, Chief External Relations Officer of CIMEST, Mrs. Pamela Chisanga, Country Representative of WaterAid Zambia, Dr. Architect Michele Scarantino, Chairperson of the Italian Business Club, distinguished speakers, senior government officials, representative of the Italian and Zambian companies, representatives of the media, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I am particularly honored to welcome here Honorable Yaluma, Minister of Commerce. Honorable Minister, allow me to say you are a dear friend of Italy, and I'm really thankful that you found time in your very busy day, we were talking about it, to be here with us. I want to welcome all of you, and I'm particularly happy to see such a crowded in COVID-19 time, so let's say with all social distance, but crowded room here in Lusaka, and crowded people also online for this event, Doing Business in Zambia. It's a very important event that we organize together with the Italian Trade Agency, with the Zambia Development Agency, with the Zambian government, with the Italian government. We joined efforts to boost our economic ties. It's a special event because today, 120 Italian companies and more than 35 Zambian companies will meet for business-to-business meetings. This is very important. We managed to overcome the limitations of this time of the pandemic, and not to waste time, we organized this event to allow companies of our two countries to meet together. And I wish that you can see the beautiful ballroom that we have outside with more than 30 stations of PC to allow this meeting. So let me thank again the Italian Trade Agency that provided this platform 365 for this event. So today's event is a cornerstone of a broader strategy of promotion of our economic ties. With a proactive approach, all the actors involved that I mentioned, the Italian Embassy, Italian Trade Agency, Zambian Development Agency, the Minister of Commerce of Zambia, the Italian Business Club, As Africa, we all work together to boost our relations. I mention As Africa because on the 25th of March, As Africa is the confederation of companies in Italy focused on Africa. As Africa, with us, with the Zambian Embassy in Rome, organized a beautiful event on the 25th of March to allow companies to meet. And today, with the Italian Trade Agency, we are doing the follow-up and we go even further, allowing business-to-business meeting. So it's what we call gioco di squadra. We work all together for the same purpose. And this is very important. Today, we will focus on three areas. The agriculture and agri-industry, energy, and water management. I want to say that it is not one shot. It is not something that we do only today. These are three sectors where we have been working and we will keep working also in the future. So for example, on agriculture, we organized an important webinar in November last year with MacFruit, which is an important fair on agriculture in Italy. And together with the Italian Trade Agency, we will sponsor a mission of Zambian businessmen and businesswomen to go to Macfruit in September this year. On energy, we had a very important webinar last October last year, with the Minister of Energy and the Minister of National Development, together with the think tank, the Foundation Rest for Africa, and the Italian Trade Agency. And we will again organize another workshop with the participation from Italy of companies next year, together with the Italian Trade Agency and the Foundation Rest for Africa. On water management, at the end of last month, end of March, we organized a very important event dedicated to the water management, waste management, where we had more than 10 Italian companies that are also here today that show their skills and their potential in cooperation with Zambian counterparts. This is to say that today is an event that is part of a broader strategy where all the actors that I mentioned work together. And I think I want to underline the presence of Minister Yaluma, the presence of our Undersecretary of State of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Di Stefano, to show and confirm how the two governments will continue to work together to boost our economic ties, to support the companies to do their job. And their job is to create business, to create wealth, to create employment, and to create a development for the countries. So for Zambia, but also for Italy. So let me just say that our work will continue. I want to mention in particular an important event that we will host on the 29th of November is a high-level roundtable focused on the mine sector in the copper belt. And we are working on this together with the think tank, the European House Ambrosetti, a very important is, again, as I said, another event of our strategy. The project that we have, the association of gems and stones, ASSOGEM, again with the Ministry of Mines, and many other events that we will. I invite you to follow with us. I will stop here. I want to thank all the organizers. I want to welcome all the participants, and I wish you a very fruitful work this morning and this afternoon. And now it is my great honor to invite to the podium here, Honorable Yaluma, for his remarks.
Good morning, everybody. Buongiorno. Why? Thank you. I guess you weren't. His Excellency hasn't yet provided breakfast for you people, so you're a little bit on the low side. But be as it may, we get going. His Excellency Mr. Antonio Maggiore, Ambassador of the Republic of Italy to Zambia. His Excellency Mr. Carlo Ferro, Italian Trade Agency President, all senior government officials present here, Bishop David Musonda Masupa, Chairperson of Zambia Development Agency, Mr. Mukula Makasa, Director General, Zambia Development Agency, all private sector representatives at this virtual business forum from the Republic of Italy and also in Zambia, friends from the media, distinguished invited guests, and of course I forgot promoter aid, Madam Pamela Chisanga. We worked together for a long time when you were in another shell. Distinguished invited guests and ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a great honor and privilege to be invited to officiate at this important business webinar themed Doing Business in Zambia. I am delighted to note that despite the COVID-19 pandemic having turned many economies in a downward spiral, we can still find innovative ways to interact through platforms such as this one. It certainly gives a great impression of the commitment and determination that still exists in fostering trade and investment between the two countries. Distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to be here today to participate at this Zambia-Italy business webinar, whose objectives to display the investment opportunities that exist in Zambia and Italy. I also do hope that this platform will further strengthen our bilateral relations and help us to create profitable and lasting trade investment linkages. And at this juncture, allow me to take this opportunity to commend the Zambia Development Agency and the Confindustria as Africa and Mediterranean CAM for organizing this event that has provided the opportunity to promote Zambian investment and trade opportunities to the Italian business community. Distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is gratifying to note that our two great countries have and continue to enjoy bilateral relations. These relations are evidenced by the opening of diplomatic missions in the two countries and the number of high-level visits of private business people from both countries. You may wish to note that Italy is now home for many Zambians, and likewise, Zambia is home to many Italians. Distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am reliably informed that the bilateral relations between Zambia and Italy have strengthened as evidence from the trade flows between the two countries, depicting a positive trade balance in favor of Italy. As of 2019, Zambia's imports and exports to and from Italy stood at $58.2 million and $10.9 million respectively. Therefore, it is important to note that there is a big trade imbalance between the two countries, as it seems to be positively skewed towards Italy. And we are doing this just to correct that skewedness so that the Italian business people can come into the country and add value, to our raw materials so that we can export more to Italy and normalize that skewedness. As key measure to address the bilateral trade imbalance, I wish to call upon all Italian business persons and corporate entities to favorably consider investing in the various Zambian sectors in order to produce more value-added goods and services for exports to Italy and other countries. Distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, although trade between Italy and Zambia remains buoyant and positively skewed in favor of Italy, we still have moderate number of Italian companies operating in Zambia. And these include the following: Parmalat, which unveiled an $800,000 powdered milk plant in 2014, Parmalat has expanded production since merging with Bonita in 1998 through new investment and enlarging its network of local milk suppliers, consisting mainly of small-scale upstream producers or farmers. Consequently, a growing number of products have been introduced by Parmalat Zambia, including a wide range of fruit juices commercialized with the brand name Santa. Secondly, Brunelli Construction, which has investment in the building sector. And three, Enel, an energy giant, has through its subsidiary, Enel Green Power, EGP, signed a 25-year power purchase agreement with ZESCO for 34 megawatts. Ngonye solar power projects being developed in the Lusaka South Multi-Facility Economic Zone. The project will be owned through a special purpose vehicle in which EGP will hold 80% and the Industrial Development Corporation, IDC, will have 20% minority equity stake. Distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, Zambia, like most economies in the world, has experienced a slowdown in economic activity as a result of the outbreak of the novel COVID-19 pandemic. However, to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, government has continued to implement conscious and forward-looking economic and investment climate policies aimed at creating an enabling business environment for economic recovery and strengthening economic resiliency. Therefore, despite facing the many challenges caused by the pandemic, Zambia presents a silver lining and remains open for investment and doing business with Italy. Further, ladies and gentlemen, the government of the Republic of Zambia has continued to implement favorable investment climate and economic policies aimed at attracting foreign direct investment and stimulating local entrepreneurship. In this regard, I wish to reiterate that my government is committed to promoting stability by upholding democracy, good governance, and the rule of law, as well as safeguarding the favorable environment for investment to thrive and promoting sustainable human development. Distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, with the favorable investment climate, I want to inform this business forum and that we are open. I come again. I want to inform this business forum that Zambia is among the best destinations for investment and that we are open and willing to receive investors. In this regard, I wish to urge all who are present virtually to take this advantage of this forum and explore the available investment and trade opportunities in Zambia. We have investment opportunities in mining, agriculture, energy, and tourism, infrastructure, information communication technology, and value addition in manufacturing. Furthermore, my government has prioritized industrialization and job creation on its economic and sustainable development agenda, and as such, has deliberately developed multi-facility economic zones and industrial parks whose main focus is to promote manufacturing and value addition. I therefore urge you to come and see what we are offering and ultimately invest in these economic zones and industrial parks without any form of entry barriers. The Zambian Development Agency, which is a specialized trade and investment promotion government agency, will certainly provide you with more information on these available opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, may I take this opportunity to assure the Italian business community and would-be investors into Zambia that Patriotic Front government will continue to ensure that investments are safe and that the business environment is conducive for private sector to thrive. We have agreed this economy is led by the private sector, and that stands. So when we talk of trying to invite private sector to come and participate in our investment journey, we mean exactly that. Your investment will be very, very much protected. You will have sound sleeps in Italy without worrying about what's happening to your investment in Zambia, because we will ring-fence your investment and we ensure that we protect your investment. If your investment grows, you are doing good to our economy. So we are partners, we'll be partners, and we'll work together and support your investment. And the Zambia Development Agency is here to facilitate your introduction to relevant institutions that will offer you vital information and adequate support as you endeavor to venture and establish your business in Zambia. With these few remarks, it's now my singular and honor privilege. And before I do that, Your Excellency, I would like to thank you most sincerely for having me here and the interaction with the Zambia Development Agency to showcase what Zambia will do, to the potential business people who would like to come into Zambia. This is what it is. It will just be better, but not going backward. So for ZDA, Chairman, thank you very much. We appreciate this. Therefore, with these few remarks, it's now my singular honor and privilege to declare this business forum officially opened. I thank you all. God bless.
Good morning to everybody. My name is Antonella Marucci, and I am the director of the Italian Trade Agency in Johannesburg. Thank you to Mr. Yaluma for your speech. Thank you for opening our webinar. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the president of the Italian Trade Agency, Mr. Carlo Maria Ferro. Mr. Ferro, please.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Yaluma, Honorable Undersecretary Di Stefano, Ambassador Maggiore, Bishop Mazupa, distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's also my honor being at this event. Unfortunately on a remote mode, but we'll have opportunity in the future for doing it in person. Zambia and Italy have established their historical bilateral relationships since the very beginning of the country's independence in the mid-60s, and in the following years has made important investment and developed a mutual business relationship to the extent that today Italy participates to about 1% of the import in Zambia. However, I believe there is time to come for strengthening this historical partnership, getting the Italian participation closer to the 3%, which is the share of Italian companies in the global trade. Italy is the 9th exporter worldwide, is the 2nd manufacturing economy in Europe, is the 2nd agricultural producer in Europe, and the interest towards the Zambian economies and partnership with Zambia is increasing, with a record year of export in 2019 with 123 million euros of exported goods, mainly machineries, electronics, and computers. Certainly, pandemic has imposed a halt to the international trade and the global export as well. However, now it's time to look forward, also considering that the Italian industrial production has restarted at full speed already last year, and the export from Italy have significantly increased worldwide in the second half of 2020. And I really believe that Zambia will become a valuable partner for Italy in the future, also considering that at the end, in the data, I think there is some underestimation, the Rotterdam effect, the logistic, the intermediate products and components of Italian exports participating in global value chain. Perhaps in our estimate, the number could be about 1.5 times the official statistic. Nevertheless, there is a big room to do more together. In particular, based on two important indicators that have been already mentioned. The one is the economic growth of the country, also supported by the African Continental Free Trade Zone area recently entered in force that will boost the economic development and the trade relationship on the entire African continent. On the other hand, the measures that have been devoted by the African Development Bank for the development of the country's infrastructure and private and say that Italian companies really have the competencies in engineering, in construction for participating as a partner to this development. And second, Zambia is a country of strong democratic tradition that allows for a safe business environment and the protection of foreign investment. And even more since the bilateral agreement for the promotion and protection of investment in 2014. We are in the context of economic dynamic. We are in the context of worldwide recovery from the pandemic, looking forward for growth in global economies and in global trade. And in this respect, it's really time to look at the Zambian economic strategy and the opportunities of partnership for Italian companies, which I would summarize in 5 possible vertical sectors without clearly excluding others. The industrial and the agricultural machineries, for which we are among the top 5 exporters globally. The sustainability and the renewable energies, the purification of water and the wastewater treatment, the agricultural development, and the infrastructure also in connection with the ADB measures for the countries. I believe all these 5 chains are really suitable for business model, including activities of the value chain located locally with FDI in the country, as I understand Minister Honorable Yaluma has mentioned. And additionally, I encourage also our enterprises in the consumer goods business to look more at that country as the growing, constant growth of middle class consuming is making also this opportunity more important for the future. There is already some interest, and I conclude with a positive note of interest of Italian companies. As you know, the Italian trade offices assist Italian and also Italian SMEs towards Zambia from our office in Johannesburg, and the office provided last year 65 assistance services to Italian companies interested to your country. So I believe really we are at the first step towards a stronger cooperation, which will make tighter the trade exchange, will make more intense the investment interest of Italian companies in the countries, and I wish to this path the best success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ferro. Now I introduce for the last institutional greeting the chairperson on Zambia Development Agency, Bishop David Musonda Mazupa. Bishop Mazupa, the stage is yours. Sorry, we can't hear anything. Sorry.
Christopher Bwalia Yaluma, MP, Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Maggiore, Ambassador of the Republic of Italy to Zambia. May I write on the protocols of the ambassador that he had earlier on stated, and their excellencies that are in Italy, as well as those that are present right here. Zambia Development Agency Director General, Mr. Mukula Makasa, all private sector representatives from Zambia, as well as from Italy present here. Senior government officials, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Minister, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to this morning's business forum between Zambia and Italy, organized by Zambia Development Agency, as well as the Italian Trade Agency. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, for over a decade now, trade between Zambia and Italy has been varying in the last 3 years. Zambia's exports to Italy have been on the upswing, rising to 10.9 million United States dollars in 2019 from 7.9 million United States dollars in 2018, and indeed 2.4 million United States dollars in 2017. However, I must reiterate the trade imbalance that the minister had earlier on had mentioned on this podium, and I want to make mention to the private business investors around here that please take opportunity of this. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, trade and investment between Zambia and Italy remain critical in improving economies of the two great countries, and there have been some continued efforts by the two countries to boost the bilateral trade through such fora. Honorable Ambassador of Italy to Zambia, I want to take this opportunity in the presence of my minister to literally just thank you for various business forums that you have arranged throughout this year, irrespective of the negative impact of the pandemic. I really want to salute you. For example, on the 25th March 2020, ZDA, together with Confederația Asa Africa and Mediterranean, we had to hold another business forum. Honorable Minister, I know you were occupied and you were not in the city, but you were ably represented by your permanent secretary. We only had a few Zambian investors as against massive Italian investors who are willing to come and invest in our country. So once again, I appeal to you, take an opportunity with such kind of a business forum like today. Additionally, Zambian potential and export marketing companies have been participating in Mark Fruit Vegetable, as we heard, Fruit Expo in Bologna, Italy, since 2018, with the support of ZDA and our Zambian embassy in Italy. But again, Honorable Minister, we cannot just end our investment in Italy with those few products. We want to broaden our product, like the ambassador of Italy stated here. There is agriculture, there is energy, there is infrastructure. So you business investors, private business investors from Zambia that are here, please take advantage of that. Though this expo, Honorable Minister, is taking place today, a number of Zambian MSMEs, particularly women, have gone flat out to invest in avocado, cashew nut plantation with a view to export the products to Italy in the near future. We congratulate you, our women Zambian investors. Please keep it up. And as Zambia Development Agency, we'll do all our efforts to make sure that we promote your export products. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all these are some of the deliberate efforts between Zambia and Italy to enhance trade ties by exploiting each other's comparative advantage aimed at to improving and scaling up trade between the two countries. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, you may wish to note that Zambian exporters are encouraged to take advantage of the preferential duty treatment of the Zambian products to Italy under the EU ACP Cotonou Agreement, and indeed everything but arms. I think this is an open door. We can use this Cotonou Agreement to trade with Italy, except for arms. Honorable Minister, as ZDA, it is our role to make sure that the exporters are sensitized and encouraged to take advantage of this opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, there is need to vigorously promote Zambia's export diversification drive, which through such a forum, among other things, will assist in accelerating bilateral trade between Zambia and Italy. Sectors that would be of interest to the Italian counterparts for investment include, among others, as the ambassador of Italy to Zambia had already emphasized: 1, agriculture, agro-processing, manufacturing, energy, and infrastructure. The Italian business community is therefore encouraged to take these opportunities by forming partnerships and joint ventures with the Zambian companies. Honorable Minister, a platform such as this business for us this morning provides a good opportunity for investors, exporters, importers for both countries to maximize the opportunities in trade and investment in order to improve the business environment in both countries. My minister did allude to the fact that in the African, in the continent of Africa, if there is a country that has very good economic trade and investment environment, Zambia is number one. I think we deserve to congratulate ourselves on that one. May this forum, Honorable Minister, bring forth a positive results that will lead you to actualize trade and investments are extremely important in ensuring exploitation of opportunities available in Zambia and Italy. Further, I would like to encourage ZDA, Italian Trade Agency, to continue with collaborative efforts in bringing together the business communities of both countries in order to exploit opportunities for trade and investment. Lastly, Honorable Minister, may I take this opportunity to wish you all the best in your deliberations and remind all participants at the Zambia and Italy Culture Center here today, which I've seen all of us have got masks, to observe COVID protocols as guided by the Ministry of Health. I thank you. Yeah. Before I take a seat, I want to take this opportunity to release my minister because he's supposed to attend to a meeting on Africa Continental Free Trade Area. The Secretary General is there at State House and they are waiting for him. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop Mazupa. Before to starting the technical section, I would like to remember that the Zambia country presentation will be recorded, and the next few days you can find the video uploaded on the website of Italian Trade Agency. And you can send questions and in a question and answer button on bottom of the video. Now we can start the technical section, and as the director of the Italian Trade Agency, I would like to in the office of Johannesburg, of course. And the office in Johannesburg is also responsible for South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. And I show you a brief presentation of the country. Can you see it? It's okay?
Yes, we can see you. Go ahead.
Thank you. First, 2 words on the Italian Trade Agency that I know, but it's the Italian Trade Agency is a governmental agency which supports the Italian country to promote, to go to the external markets and promote the attraction for foreign investment in Italy. We have 77 offices in the world. We have two offices in Italy, and we can offer services of information, consulting, training, assistance, and promotion to the Italian companies. Regarding the Zambia is a country with democracy, politically stable, is a multi-party, and the government is attentive to improving the business climate, attracting new investors. The country is rich of natural resources, and with an estimated population of more than 70 million people. Due to the COVID pandemic, we have had a strong economic contraction in 2020. The estimate is the 3.8% of the real GDP. But the forecasts for the future are good, and The growth will be in 2021 estimate in 3.2%. In 2022, 2024, the good trend must be continued, and 2024 the value could have reached the 5.5%. Very interesting is that in 2020, the World Bank ranked Zambia as the 5th best country to do business in sub-Saharan Africa, and improving its ranking from 87 to 85. We can consider some point of strength and some point of weakness of the country. I said, is a peaceful and stable political system, is a positive investor-friendly economic environment. It's guarantee and security for investors with the legislated rights to full and market value compensation. The country is abundant with natural resources, mineral wealth, agriculture wealth, and high hydroelectric potential. The country has a vibrant private sector, unlimited repatriation of profits, and progressive banking, legal insurance services of international standards, and the stock exchange market. Duty-free access to regional, wider Africa, EU and USA market. In general, it's a good place to stay. For the weakness, we can say that, of course, it's a high dependence on copper, which is further accentuated by dependence of China. That is the main importer of ore. Landlocked and dependent on the transport routes of neighboring countries. The electricity generation is insufficient and based exclusively or almost exclusively on hydropower. Unreliable transport networks, and some critical issues we can highlight high poverty rate and many infrastructural deficiencies. High level of inequality, healthcare, education, administrative deficiencies. In 2020, there was a sovereign default, and it's a difficult or unsustainable external debt. The country has signed many international treaties and its memberships. For example, it is members of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, of the Africa Union, of the World Bank Group, and others. And we have the countries' bilateral investment treaties, for example, with Italy and other countries in Europe. Investment-related agreements and institutions, African Growth Opportunity Act, World Trade Organization. For the dispute resolution, the convention, the country signed the Convention on the Settlement of Investment Dispute of the Permanent Court of Arbitration, and the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. For the import part, we can consider that this is the schedule that shows us the main imports partner of Zambia. We can see that Italy is the 21st partner, and in 2020, all the data referring the 2020 are lower than 2019 for the COVID pandemic problems. But in any case, the amount is important for us. What is the main important commodities that Zambia imports from the world. We can see that in general are machineries, and many of these are agricultural machineries. Also pharmaceutical and medicines preparations. We can consider chemical products, rubber products, metal products, and article of clothing, pesticides, and telecommunication equipment. What are the value that Zambia imports from Italy? We can see that the value is very, these products are similar, very in line of the international other countries. So in general, the import is machineries, especially agriculture, buildings element, electric motors, generators, transformers, measuring, testing, and navigation instruments apparatus, metal building elements, string generators, and article for clothing. So potential, we have many sectors that we can improve to export in Zambia, because many of the products, the main products that Zambia imports from the world are in fact products that Italy can offer. Briefly, I wanted to show you what Italian Trade Agency can give you to the Italian companies to improve their presence in Zambia. In our website, the section services, you can find all the list of our services. We have services, some of these are free, some of with the fee. The main of these are services to know, so are free, and they are available immediately online, but some of these can be asked to the ITA office in the world. Some other are to services to grow, and there are 8, and services at fee. But for the Italian companies which are less of 100 employers, we can offer the 3 of these completely free. I invite you to see our website and to know how all our services. For the pandemic situation, ITA has brought spread the new international new tools for help the Italian companies to participate to international fairs that are many of these are now in digital tools. So we are realized new tools, that is Smart 365, that is the application that we use today. And it is a platform that we can create and manage a virtual or hybrid event, and we can create a digital fairs, but also missions with online B2B section, seminars, and pitch section. Exhibitors can show their catalog in electronic format, and the participant have a virtual stand if it's a fair, or a virtual room if it's a B2B meetings. And so they can meet freely or with a plan, planning, for example, for B2B section. That is all, and I hope that you can, if you have any questions, we can send an email. That's our address email, johannesburg@ite.it, and I hope that to give you all the information that you need. Okay. Now we can continue with the technical section, and I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Nkuruma Chama Kalaluka. Is an agriculture expert who shows us the primary and secondary agriculture machinery market. Please, Mr. Kalaluka.
Hello, good morning, participants. So I'm gonna speak about the agriculture production and processing machinery market. Antonella, you confirm that you can hear me?
It's perfect. We can see all.
Yes, we can hear you. Please
so
go
you can
on.
hear. All right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So a bit about my background. I studied in Europe and I'm going to talk about briefly the agriculture machinery market. And that at the moment, what shows there is my background. So I studied in Europe, business administration and economics. I previously worked for the Dutch Embassy in Zambia, done some consultancy work for the Netherlands Enterprise Agency each year, as well as several international companies with a lot of regional experience as well. So we can start. Next slide, please, for the presentation. Yes, so I'm talking about the agriculture, the market for primary agriculture processing machinery, as well as secondary processed agricultural products. And the presentation outline is as follows. Background, I'm going to provide background, primary production and processing, and then I'll speak about the mechanization demand in brief. The next section will be player competitive strategies and business models. And then the last part will be potential target markets and market offerings. So this presentation is a summary of a study that was undertaken on behalf of ICHE. So primary production and processing. So agriculture production in Zambia is a predominant economic activity in the country. So aside from mining, of course, agriculture employs a lot of people, both in rural, especially in rural areas, but also some in the peri-urban areas. Farming groups can be divided into small, medium, and large scale. And then there are some sub-segments within this. So for example, for the small scale sector, what I try to do in this study is to distinguish between micro, medium, and large scale, small scale sector operators. So that especially for purposes of assessing the effective market demand, it's important to make these distinctions within the segments and across the segments. Within group variations exist depending on the farming level, intensity, sophistication, and product focus. This especially applies to, say, for example, the small scale farm sector, where variations in terms of agricultural productivity, sophistication, and even the product focus will vary between the micro farmers, the medium, and the large scale small segment farm operators. So there'll be distinctions there. Agriculture processing base is as diffuse, agriculture processing base not as diffuse as primary production base. So what I mean here is that for agriculture processing, there are fewer actors involved as opposed to, example, primary processors, primary producers. So these are basically people that are engaged in primary agriculture production. So there's a wider base at the primary level rather than at the processing secondary level. Many processed agricultural products are imported. So these will range from cheese, so various items are imported. Of course, there's the level of processing that takes place for some, let's say, livestock-related products like milk, for example. Some yogurt gets processed in Zambia as well, but then there's also a lot of processed imported agricultural products coming into the country. Even items that are processed locally, like yogurt, there'll still be a lot of imports of yogurt as well into the country. Zambia is self-sufficient in staple primary food production. So the staple primary food product is maize or corn, and Zambia is self-sufficient in this. So for several years, Zambia has produced more than the food requirement. So the consumption requirement for maize, it doesn't exceed 1 million metric tons. Zambia has produced above 2 million, sometimes 3 million metric tons of maize per annum, which means that there's a maize surplus that can actually be transformed through processing into other products like cornflakes, starch, etc., which really doesn't take place as such. Mostly, this primary product like maize is processed into maize meal, and that's all. And other activities that can be done to it that probably have higher margins are not being done at the moment. Next slide. So next slide, please. Right. So sorry, can you please go back the previous slide? Sorry. Yeah, so for background primary production and processing, so like I said, white maize is the dominant food crop. Output increased between 2018 and 2020. So the forecast for 2020 was 3.4 million metric tons. Soybean production followed maize production. So soybean was 296,866 metric tons. This was followed by wheat, 191,620 metric tons, sweet potatoes, 144,706 metric tons, and groundnut production, 127,172 metric tons. Now, I'd like to say at this stage that, for example, some of these other crops, maize periodically has been exported when there's been no export ban. One of the challenges has been, I think, in focusing on maize exports has been that sometimes there are rules that prohibit the export of maize. But then also it's interesting, sometimes these also apply to wheat. Products like sweet potatoes are hardly exported, and yet having lived in Europe myself, I have been in countries where countries import sweet potatoes, and I've not known of Zambia exporting those products abroad. Groundnuts, I think that there's been some attempts. Also, I recall countries that wanted to import from Zambia. Some of the challenges were related to aflatoxin levels, but I think that some of these have been overcome. But largely, those are supply chain related constraints that a dedicated importer can still overcome. So there's potential to import groundnuts as well from Zambia. So Zambia, like I said, is self-sufficient in production of staple foods. The maize seed production forecast was 56,791 metric tons in 2020. So this was higher than preceding years. Zambia has largely become self-sufficient and is even a net exporter of seeds. So which is a considerable feat. So it can export seed to other countries as well. The 2020 cotton seed production forecast was 41,441 metric tons, which was lower than 2018 output of 88,219 metric tons. Now, this may have had something to do as well with global cotton prices, because there's variation sometimes in output depending on what the market prices are like. Next slide. So livestock rearing patterns and preferences are not similar across farmer types. So some livestock types, for example, are more favored than others depending on the farmer type. Now, what you get is, poultry and village chicken is the largest livestock segment with 15,391,000. And then this was followed by poultry broilers with 6.7 million. Cattle 3.7 million, goats 3.5 million, poultry layers 1.672 million, pigs 1 million, and sheep about 170,000. Some large livestock farmers are vertically integrated with aspects of crop production and processing, livestock production and processing, and in instances retailing. So these will enjoy economies of scale. They'll be efficient, and they'll, have low production prices overall. But this is essentially a very small group. Most don't have this level of vertical integration. The smallholders own most cattle and poultry village chickens, while large farmers dominate poultry, that is broilers and layers production. Like I've said, the cattle production, for example, most of it is owned by smallholder farmers. Next slide. So basically, what you could say is that agricultural production in Zambia is favorable and amenable to mechanization. And this can be achieved, for example, through electrification, so which means that the area devoted to a major crop has been increased. So if you increase the area devoted to crop production, for example, you require additional equipment to be able to farm this additional area. So the area devoted, so for example, the area devoted to major crop production has increased on average between 2018 and 2020, save for groundnut production. So white maize recorded an 8.5% average increase in the area dedicated, soybeans 6% average area increase, wheat 9.5% average increase in the area, and sweet potatoes 11% on average in the area devoted to that. But groundnut production, there was a decrease of 12.5%. Increased agricultural products demand is due to domestic population and economic growth, and import demand for agriculture products also favor mechanization. Next slide.
Mr. Kulala, I'm sorry, we have 2 more minutes to go. So if you can
okay.
please accelerate.
So I'll try to be very fast then. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Background, yeah. So medium-term economic conditions favor import substitution of primary products and secondary product agricultural activities. So there's potential here for import substitution, especially with the effect of COVID-19 and the disruption in international supply chains. There's a possibility that some of the production can actually be localized now rather than imported into the country. That, as well as macroeconomic conditions such as depreciation of the exchange rate, means that imports become unfavorable and local production becomes much more favorable in addition to exports. Next slide. So mechanization in beef, so there's a low level of agricultural mechanization at the moment. Zambia has like 4.7 tractors per 100 square kilometers. So this is very, very different, for example, for other countries that would have, comparable countries that would have 74 tractors per 100 square meters. So that, if used as a proxy, it just shows the amount of potential for mechanization in Zambia for primary agricultural production. Next slide. I think we can still skip this slide. We can go to the next, please. Yeah, so what I meant to show here is that primarily what you have now in terms of concentration of agricultural machinery now is in old agroecological regions that previously had a lot of concentration. So Southern Province, Central Province, for example, now with a change in rainfall patterns, agroecological region 3, which is in the north, for example, would favor much more mechanization. So there's huge potential to move mechanical equipment in that direction. Next slide. Next slide. We can also go after this. The next one, please. I think in brief, what I would say is that apart from the demand for primary agricultural equipment, there's huge demand also for processing equipment, that is to process primary agricultural products. Like I said, for example, products like maize, soybeans, and oil and other products, for example, that are related groundnuts, that at the moment have only to some extent intermediate levels of processing, can be further processed within the country. And this becomes now much more favorable in light of macroeconomic conditions, like I said, with the depreciation of the kwacha, which has been almost 50% now, with the disruptions in international supply chains, brought on, for example, by COVID, there's huge possibility now to process locally the items that had been imported before. This, in instances, might require some level of backward integration and work in terms of increasing the primary product output. For example, if one ventures into dairy products processing, the quantity of dairy products, primary product like milk, might not be sufficient to justify a much bigger secondary processing base. So there might be work related in terms of streamlining and improving the efficiency of primary agricultural production in order to maximize the potential of agricultural processing. But there's huge potential for this. The provisions of the, for example, in the 2021 national budget as announced in 2020, had incentives there that actually made it favorable for import substitution to occur within the country. So I think that in short, this is the situation as it is now. The presentation itself has more zeroed in terms of the actual products where the import substitution potential lies, and also where potential for importation and investment in machinery for primary production lies. I would like probably just to conclude here by saying that sometimes a deficit, a trade deficit with one country might actually portend potential for a trade surplus with other countries. So in the Zambian case, for example, Zambia can import capital machinery from country X, which can be Italy, to process final products in Zambia itself that are then exported to country Y, which, for example, can be DRC or another country. And then in that way, generate a surplus on the export side with another country to overcome the deficit with another. So there's potential there, and I just hope that, of course, the assemblage, the people participating can take advantage of that. So I'll end the presentation at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kalaluka. And before passing to the next speaker, I wanted to remember all the speakers that in order to not exceed the maximum duration of the webinar, please respect the limit of 15 minutes for each speech. And now I wanted to introduce Mr. Kachinga Piri of Enel Green Powers. Please, Mr. Piri, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Antonella. I believe you have a copy of my presentation. Thank you. Ambassador Maggiore and the president of the ITA, Mr. Ferro, I think you are joining us online. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say good morning to you, and thank you for inviting me to be here and participate in this country presentation webinar today. I have a brief presentation that speaks to the energy sector in Zambia. Now, I struggled a bit with the extent of the depth of the presentation. Having had a chat with Antonella, I understand that a number of the participants joining us online today from Italy are either manufacturers or suppliers of equipment. And so my presentation this morning focuses more on just giving an overview of the energy sector in Zambia, who the key players are, and doesn't go into a lot of detail. Hopefully we can have further discussions after that. I'm also focusing more on grid-connected operators and not so much on off-grids and other smaller energy operators in the country. So a bit of background for myself. I spent, I think, the last 13 years in the energy sector with the Energy Regulation Board, the regulator here, the National Utilities, ZESCO, and now I'm doing business development with Enel Green Power. The next slide just gives an overview of Enel. We are a global utility with an installed capacity of just over 87 gigawatts. We are present in 35 countries on 5 different continents. And I think at the bottom there, you see our key financial results for 2020, a market capitalization of 84 billion euros, and an EBITDA of 17.9 billion euros. We can go to the next slide. This just gives an overview of the companies in the Enel family. So we have Enel Green Power on the top left. There is thermal generation also, about 45 gigawatts. And together these combine to what we call global power generation. And then we have other companies involved in the energy value chain, Enel X, global trading, infrastructure networks, and also dealing with retail. The next slide focuses more on Enel Green Power. The dark green on the map just shows where we are presently located. So we have facilities operating in those areas. The light green shows where we have a presence and either have facilities under construction or are developing projects. In terms of our installed capacity, we have 45 gigawatts of renewable capacity, although in total we manage 49 gigawatts. There is some capacity that is not fully owned by us, but managed by ourselves. Our plan over the next 3 years, 2021 to 2023, is to develop almost 20 gigawatts of new capacity. And you can see the breakdown in terms of capacity and in terms of location around the world. Next slide, please. Narrowing into the African continent, just showing where we are. We started with South Africa. We have an office in Johannesburg. We have an installed capacity in South Africa in excess of 600 megawatts of both wind and solar, and have under construction over 500 megawatts. In 2019, we commissioned a new plant in Zambia in the Lusaka South M phase. It's a 34 megawatt solar PV plant, which sells all its power to ZESCO. We're also present in North Africa, in Morocco. We have over 200 megawatts in operation of wind and 300 megawatts of CCGT, and also have projects under construction. We have offices in Addis Ababa and Nairobi, and also seeking to develop projects there where we have either been awarded projects as preferred bidder or are developing greenfield projects. The next 4 or 5 slides now focus more on the energy sector in Zambia. And what I do firstly is just give an overview of the key stakeholders in the energy sector and sort of try and present what the value chain looks like. And then we'll have on the next slide some statistics in terms of actual production and consumption for 2020. So, of course, you have the Ministry of Energy, which is responsible for policy decision-making at a national level. And I will speak briefly, I think 2 slides later, what the key legislative and regulatory documents are. But you do have Ministry of Energy, which sets the policy direction for development of the energy sector. 2 quasi-government institutions that are important to mention are the ERB, the Energy Regulation Board. This is the regulator for the sector. They basically set out regulation, provide licensing to all entities that would like to operate in the sector, and then ensure that operators operate in line with the law and in line with regulation that has been established by themselves. So the same slide. On the far right, we have RIA, which is the Rural Electrification Authority. Their mandate is primarily to increase access to clean and reliable electricity or energy in the rural areas. And they have various interventions that they undertake in order to do that. In terms of the industry itself, like I said, this is focusing only on grid-connected operators. You have ZESCO, which is the national utility. ZESCO is a vertically integrated utility, meaning that it does in-house everything through the value chain, which is generation, transmission, distribution, and supply of power. In terms of generation capacity, ZESCO represents about 77% of generation capacity. Depending on what you define as an IPP and what you define as ZESCO, you could either say 77% or 65%. I think 77 is accurate because even what may be defined as an IPP, in this case, Caribbean North Bank extension, is in a sense 100% subsidiary of ZESCO, and so it's right to regard that as ZESCO. We also have independent power producers. These are private companies that generate and sell power to ZESCO, like ourselves. And these companies will represent 23% of the generation capacity. In terms of the value chain, ZESCO, like I said, both generates, and you can think of it as sells power to themselves at a transmission level, and then are also present in transmitting and distributing and finally selling power to retail customers. The IPPs, like I said, will generate power, but are all selling power to ZESCO, and so they will have contracts, power purchase agreements with ZESCO, and ZESCO will then on-sell that power to its customers. At a transmission level, we also have the presence of CEC, which is the Copperbelt Energy Corporation. They basically own transmission infrastructure on the Copperbelt province, and they primarily sell that power. So they have transmission infrastructure. They had a long-term PPA with ZESCO, which expired a year ago now. But their business model was that they bought power from ZESCO and then sold that power on to their customers, who were predominantly large mining customers operating on the Copperbelt. They also, excuse me, they also have, I think, some customers the north of the border with Zambia in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and have their own private arrangements where they sell, they buy power and sell to those private customers. That model has continued, except that they do not have the long-term contract that they had with ZESCO. Like I said, that expired and the new contract has not been renewed. ZESCO also used the CEC network to on-sell power to its other customers, either on the Copperbelt or in the Democratic Republic of Congo. At the distribution level, of course, infrastructure is owned by ZESCO, but we do also have private distributors who own their own distribution networks and on-sell power to retail customers. Of course, we have an off-grid presence. Like I said, I haven't focused on the off-grids for today, but just to mention that, of course, RIA is there to sort of set the agenda in terms of increasing access to rural areas, but there are also private players in the off-grid space who have various interventions that they are currently implementing. Next slide. One before. Sorry, one before, just back. Oh, okay, it's not here. Let's move on. Might have missed out a slide. In terms of consumption, the mines, as this is data as of 2020, as of last year, the mines represented 53% of total national consumption. Households or retail represented 32%. There might be more than just households in there. I think other sectors such as the services, which would be schools, hospitals, et cetera, even utilities, water utilities, et cetera, might be included in that 32%. And then the rest, about 15%, is accounted for by other commercial and industrial customers. So total output in 2020 was just over 12,000 gigawatt hours. And like I said, 53% of that was the mines. A key topical issue in Zambia has been tariffs. The ERB are currently undertaking cost of service study, but the figure at the bottom just shows you what the average tariffs from a regional perspective look like. This is data as of 2020 taken from the ERB. And although in Zambia we have had significant increases over the last 10 years, we are still sitting, according to the ERB, at a tariff of about 7.4 cents per kilowatt hour, which some might argue is not cost reflective. But I think a lot of that is because while in Kwacha terms we have had an increase in retail rates, we have also had a significant depreciation of the Kwacha, which Mr. Kalalka referred to in his presentation. And that sort of dampens what the US dollar rate would be. And comparatively looks like the rate has remained static over the last 5 years. Next slide. Okay, this slide just then highlights key legislation. I won't speak much, I have a minute left, but I think it's important for you to note the key legal and regulatory documents governing the sector. We have a new Electricity Act, the Electricity Act number 11 of 2019. This was promulgated last year, beginning of last year, and it replaces the old act, which came into force, I think in the mid-90s, probably 94, 95. We also have a new Energy Regulation Act, Act number 12 of 2019, promulgated at the same time and also replaces the previous ERB Act, which came into effect also in the mid-90s. We have the Zambian Grid Code and the Zambian Distribution Code. These are effectively technical documents that govern how operators would connect to the transmission grid and the distribution grid and how they would be required to operate once they are connected. Both of these documents are currently undergoing review led by the ERB. Next slide. I think my time is up. I'll just, this slide just highlights, I think, what are the key developments taking place in the sector right now. I referred to the cost of service study that the ERB is currently undertaking. We understand this study should have been completed by the end of the first quarter this year. I haven't seen any notice from the ERB about when it will be released, but we do expect that this study should be completed and released to us soon. Before this, the last study was done more than 10 years ago, 2016. And so it's been an important study that participants in the sector have been looking out for. The ministry is also developing an integrated resource plan, which is intended to be a 30-year plan, which essentially clearly defines the available energy resources available in the country. So everything from hydro to all renewables, plus non-renewable sources, combine that with what a projected demand would be over that 30-year period, and then come up with a plan of how these resources would be developed. As I said, the ERB is currently working on revising the transmission and distribution codes. They have shared draft documents with participants in the sector who have made their comments on them, and we would be expecting feedback from the ERB in terms of next steps.
I'm sorry, then, 1 minute to go, please. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Last point was just the ERB is also implementing a smart grid project in collaboration with ZESCO. And I think it's important for you, as you look at understanding the sector and participating in the sector, just understand the context and the scope of that project and how it might be relevant or important to you. With that, thank you very much for your time. And again, thank you for having me here this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Pidi. The next speaker is Mrs. Pamela Melela Chisanga, Country Director of WaterAid Zambia, who shows us the opportunities for private sector engagement in water, sanitation, and hygiene. Please, Mrs. Chisanga, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. As introduced, my name is Pamela Tsanga, and I am Country Director for WaterAid in Zambia. To save on time, I'll simply say All protocols observed, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So my presentation is very quick. Please skip the background and let's just go straight into the presentation. I was asked to talk about opportunities for private sector engagement in the water sector. Now, the water sector is a big sector. It is divided into several subsectors. So we have the water supply subsector, we have the water resources management sector, subsector, and other subsectors. So my presentation this morning will focus on the water supply subsector. I will not be touching on the other subsectors. Also, another caveat in terms of talking about water, water supply, we combine water supply with sanitation and hygiene. So I'm going to be referring to WASH, which is water, sanitation, and hygiene as a subsector. Just a little bit of a background about WaterAid, who we are. We are the world's biggest non-governmental organization that has an exclusive focus on water, sanitation, and hygiene. We were established in 1981 by water utilities in the UK, and we have since spread to 28 countries across Africa and Asia and part of Latin America. So incidentally, Zambia is one of the first countries where WaterAid started working when it was established, and we started as a drought response program based in Southern Province, where we were supporting districts like Gwembe, Siavonga, and others that had drought at that time. Next slide. So just a bit of a background in terms of WASH coverage, which is water, sanitation, and hygiene coverage in Zambia. Out of the total population of Zambia, which is roughly about 18 million or slightly below that, 64% of the population have access to water. Now, when you look at these statistics, you will see that in terms of urban areas, there is quite some reasonable coverage at 87%. But for the other areas, which are the rural areas and peri-urban areas are areas in cities and small towns, the coverage is quite low. For sanitation as well, you will see that the coverage is quite low in the rural areas compared to the urban areas. When we talk about sanitation as well, you will see that much of the sanitation coverage that we are talking about is actually what we call on-site sanitation, where people have either pit latrines or are using septic tanks. In terms of off-site sanitation, which ensures that whatever waste is transported to another place where it is disposed of safely, that is quite low. For Lusaka City alone, those that are on the sewer network are only about 14%. Next slide. So what are the bottlenecks in terms of ensuring high coverage of WASH in Zambia? So the number one factor is the high poverty levels. Most of the water supply sanitation services that we have in the country are actually on what we call self-supply, meaning that people drill their own boreholes, they dig their own wells, they dig their own pit latrines or put up their own sanitation facilities, the septic tanks. So because of poverty levels, many of the people in these areas that I highlighted earlier as not having much access, the rural areas and the peri-urban areas, they are not able to invest in water and sanitation services, hence the low coverage. Other factors include low investment in the sector, low funding to the sector. There is a bit of weak coordination in the sector as well. We are a number of actors that are doing different things. Sometimes we don't really coordinate well to ensure that we have full coverage. Other factors as well include the fact that we as citizens do not demand our rights to WASH, and this is why we have resorted to self-supply, because nobody sees it as their responsibility to provide these services to citizens. Citizens simply provide on their own, and they don't really demand services to water, sanitation, and hygiene. Next slide. So maybe just a few examples of the work that we have done with small-scale private sector in Zambia and local entrepreneurs. An example is manual drilling in areas like Luapula and Western Province, which are very sandy, but also have a very high water table. We have worked with local entrepreneurs to train them in what we call manual drilling, where they drill boreholes manually using equipment that we then supported them with to start their own companies, small companies for borehole drilling. This is because it's very difficult to drill in sandy areas, but because we have a high water table in these two areas in Aprile and Western Province, we've been able to support initiatives such as manual drilling, working together with organizations like UNICEF. We've also, in the waste disposal space, we have also worked with a number of local entrepreneurs, supporting them as well to look at how they can work on solid waste management, so garbage collection, providing training for these small entrepreneurs, as well as getting them to engage the local authorities to get the necessary permissions for them to do their garbage collection service. Another one in terms of sanitation, we have worked with the Lusaka Water and Sanitation Company under the Lusaka Sanitation Project, where we have developed a financing model for people in places like Kanyama to access funding for them to be able to put up sanitation facilities. I talked about high poverty levels earlier, which hinder communities from having access to sanitation. So what we then do is provide a small amount of money that goes to the Lusaka Sanitation Project. So a family can access, this funding and be able to put up a better sanitation facility, even though it's still on site, but the kinds of sanitation facilities that we then help them to put up are ones that will not be able to contaminate groundwater, which is one of the challenges that we also face in terms of water supply. Next slide, please. So in terms of working with local contractors, this is just from us as WaterAid. There are many other actors, like I mentioned earlier, including government that is doing a lot of this work that we have done as an organization. Our approach to implementing this work is to model what can be done in terms of delivering water, sanitation, and hygiene services. We then influence others like government, like private sector, other stakeholders, cooperating partners to invest in wash services, because we have developed the models that we have tried and tested, and we see that they work for them to be able to adopt. So over the last 2 years, we've worked with a number of contractors to model sanitation, water and hygiene facilities in healthcare centers. So we've done about 40 in the last 2 years. We've also constructed ablution facilities in schools, and we've done about 11 over the last 2.5 years. We have also been able to put up piped water schemes or networks, and we have done about 62 small piped water schemes over the last 2 years. I'm sure for those of you that are in Zambia, you will know and you'll have heard about government also doing a lot of these piped water schemes based on the models that we have developed, as well as also putting up the sanitation facilities or ablution facilities in schools in rural areas. Next slide. So I'll just maybe go back to talking about the financing model for sanitation that we use under the Lusaka Sanitation Project. So you see that we are providing a small grant. Essentially, we are paying for the service for the families, and then they sign an agreement with the Lusaka Sanitation Project, where they begin to pay back slowly the amount of money that has been pre-financed for them to have a toilet. So they can take their time to pay off, for the toilet. But in the meantime, we provide the support through the Lusaka Sanitation Project. We pay for their toilet and they begin to pay back. So this is something that we are working on to develop further to make it a little bit more broader in terms of coverage, so that we can have more people, especially in the rural areas, have access to sanitation facilities with, of course, maybe a little bit of interest that they may have to pay on the financing that they get. Currently, under the projects that we are implementing, they are not paying any interest. Next, please. So in terms of opportunities for private sector, there are a lot of things that private sector can be able to go into. Financing is one of them. An example is the model that I shared earlier on sanitation, solar pumping solutions for water supply. You will not believe the kinds of challenges we've had with the 62 water supply schemes that I talked about earlier, where sometimes we've had to go out of the country to places like Namibia to import pumps because we don't have the right kinds of pumps available in Zambia. The waste management equipment for recycling waste, especially plastics. One of the things that the garbage collectors are struggling with is that even if they collect plastics, they can only collect so much given the capacity of their vehicles. But when they go to sell this plastic, you find, a massive amount of plastic like this is only about a kg or 2 kgs, and that's very little money. So if they had equipment to compress the plastics, they would be able to collect more and then have, more plastic that they can be able to sell to generate meaningful revenue. So other things are water treatment chemicals, water metering equipment. So one of the things that I should have mentioned earlier is that in terms of water supply in this country, the entities that are mandated to do this, to provide water, are the commercial utilities. So any other entity that wants to provide these services to communities has to go through the commercial utilities. And so you then get to partner with the commercial utilities to provide water under their license. So previously, the commercial utilities were only restricted to urban areas. There are new guidelines that are now coming out and are already being applied, where they are now able to extend the services to the rural areas. So one of the things that we have done with the piped water schemes is to develop management models for running those piped water schemes. Some of those models are run under license of the water utilities, of course, but exclusively by the community. And we have models where the commercial utilities have now taken over and are running the piped water schemes. So there is also an opportunity to be able to run such schemes under license of the commercial utilities. Some of the challenges that our commercial utilities have are, things like having metering equipment, that is a challenge, water quality testing equipment, chemicals for water quality testing. There are times when we have run out of, some of these chemicals in the country. So there are plenty of opportunities in terms of the value chain in the waste sector. There are so many other things that we can be able to do. With the advent of COVID, hygiene is a big issue. We've seen quite a proliferation of hand washing devices that are being developed by our small scale private sector in Zambia. Next slide, please. So in terms of some of the challenges, briefly, I'll talk about, working with contractors, for instance. One of the challenges that we find is that they have very little funding or finance for them to be able to do the work without being paid. So if you don't pay them in advance, they are not able to do the work. Sometimes you pay them in advance, they still don't do the work. You have to chase after them for them to do the work. Next slide. So I think in terms of opportunities, you can see there are quite a number of things that have happened. The changes in legislation that allow actors in the rural areas and peri-urban areas to provide water and sanitation services. The commitment by government to meet the water and sanitation goals, SDG goal number 6. And also in terms of the demand in the informal settlement, there is quite a lot of demand for water and sanitation services in the informal settlements. And with the advent of COVID as well, this is something that we have experienced where people are increasingly demanding services, particularly water supply. So with 1 minute left, I will end there. And so thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Chisanga. Now I introduce Mr. Ernest Sakala, Africa Development Bank. he is the Senior Private Sector Investment Officer. Mr. Sakala, please, you can start.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Perfectly, thanks.
Thank you. So I will present to you a presentation on how our private sector financing operations operate in the bank. And it's very gratifying that we have the Italian private sector who we feel we can partner with in terms of providing them with financial support to be able to invest in the country. So we may proceed to the next slide. So that's my brief bio. I've been with the bank for the last 7-8 years, looking at private sector investments in Zambia. And I must say that we are still eager to see the African Development Bank partner more and more with private enterprises that want to invest in the country. So this is a very good platform for us from the African Development Bank. Next slide. So basically, the next slide gives us the 3 key areas that we've identified for private sector financing in Zambia. And we, as African Development Bank, are present in all the 54 African countries. We, as a bank, see the private sector as the engine to help help us achieve our institutional mandate of sustainable and inclusive economic development and social progress in our member states. So we look at things like improving the investment and business climate in countries, development of social and economic infrastructure, and increasing access to reliable and quality services. We also look at the aspects of strengthening private sector enterprise, promote strong social and corporate governance standards, thus assisting African countries adopt international best practices. Now, as a bank, we do provide financing to both the public and the private sector, but seeing that the nature of our forum today is focused towards private sector financing, I will also zoom in on the private sector aspects. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So the next slide gives us the areas of focus of the African Development Bank. And I think if you look at the slide up there and the areas of focus of this event, which is agriculture, energy, and water management, it fits in very well to our 5 areas of focus. So as an African Development Bank, our first area of focus is what we call Light and Power Africa. So this is basically a transformative partnership with governments, the private sector, bilateral and multilateral agencies to achieve universal access to energy in Africa by 2025. So we are taking several interventions like the development of off-grid and grid solutions, looking at rural electrification and enhancing the efficiencies of the energy sectors across Africa. Our second area of focus is Feed Africa. And this looks at what the bank will do to mobilize resources and blend financing in order to achieve the financing gap for the private sector, which will lead to agricultural transformation. You will be aware that Africa has great potential to grow its own food. And we feel that it is time for the bank to step in and boost the sector. As our African Development Bank president always says, the future of Africa lies in agriculture. And we believe with significant investment in agriculture, in the next 5 to 10 years, Africa should be able to feed itself without any problem. We also heard, I think, from earlier presentation where we're saying like a country like Zambia, we have a maize surplus. So what are we doing with that maize? We need to come up with innovative ways to ensure that all that is processed and none of it goes to waste. Our third area of focus is industrialize Africa. So the bank supports African business to expand beyond, expand to markets beyond the national borders. And we are seeing this as an opportunity to grow our industrial base, to be able to process our raw materials and add value within the continent. So this is one of the major areas of focus where we're trying to ensure industrialization of Africa. And we are aware that with partners like the Italian business community, we heard that pumps like in Zambia are being imported from Namibia, the water pumps, because we don't have enough here. This will provide a good opportunity to set up manufacturing bases for those pumps so that we can actually manufacture them locally and help expand the Zambian private sector. Then our fourth area of focus is to integrate Africa. Now, the integration of Africa is very important, and we want to see how we can easily move from one part of Africa to another, how we can communicate, and how we can transport our various goods and products that we manufacture. And I think with the coming of the Continental Free Trade Area, the integration of Africa will be very, very important to ensure that there's a free flow of trade. One thing that we've done here is we have created a lot of one-stop border posts. As a bank, we are involved in the Kazungula Bridge project, which is linking Zambia and Botswana to ease the movement of transport and goods along that area. Our last area of focus as a bank is to improve the quality of life of the people of Africa. So we realize that we can industrialize Africa, we can try to integrate it. But if the people who live in Africa have very poor quality of life, then all those will be done in vain. So because of that, we feel that there is need to look at our health systems, our education systems, so that as we achieve the development of Africa, we have a healthy population who is energetic enough to drive the continent forward and achieve economic prosperity for the continent. We can move on to the next slide, please. So our next slide basically looks at our lending instruments. What does our lending and non-lending instruments, how can the bank reach out to the private sector in terms of providing them with the necessary finances to expand or invest in African member countries? So if you look at the slide, we have lending activities and non-lending activities. And our lending activities really look at aspects of loans and lines of credit, equity investments, guarantees, and risk management products. For non-lending, we look at policies and guidelines, technical assistance, and advisory services. So if you look at the lending instruments, predominantly under the lending instruments, we're looking at loans. The bank can provide you with loans up to a maximum of 15 years. And this can be in foreign currency or in local currency. And these loans can have a grace period of up to a maximum of 5 years, meaning you don't service the principal during that period, but you only look at the interest. And these loans will be like senior loans for project finance. So if we want to do a greenfield project, let's say an Italian company wants to set up a power generating facility in Zambia, they can apply for the project finance loan. We can look at loans to companies which we call corporate loans, where we can actually invest in already existing business in Zambia. So I heard that some Italian businesses like Brunelli Construction, Parmalat, if those are partnering with other people from Italy and want to expand, we are available to provide corporate loans. Then we have lines of credit. So lines of credit are essentially provided to financial institutions to help them reach out to small and medium enterprises, which we as a bank would not traditionally reach out because of our structure. Our second instrument are guarantees. So in order to mitigate investment risks, the bank provides two types of guarantees. These are the partial risk guarantee and the credit risk guarantee. So the credit risk guarantee is used to hedge where we're doing other financial institutions, to hedge against any default which they may suffer in the event they lend out money and the private sector doesn't pay. And the partial risk guarantee is normally applied to sovereign lending, where we are lending with to the government of Zambia. So we also have equity investments, and these equity investments take the form of direct equity or through the bank investing in a private equity firm for them to onwards invest into various companies in a particular country. We have risk mitigation, various risk mitigation products to help hedge against various risks, especially where big players like some of the Italian private sector energy or agricultural companies want to invest in Zambia and have a fear of things like political risk and so forth. We have adequate risk management products. Our fifth instrument there is the trade finance. So this trade finance is basically provided to commercial banks to help them with on lending, and also to help them provide soft commodity loans for them to reach out to the private sector. And our last instrument is a technical assistance. So we do realize that certain private sector entities would need technical assistance in order for them to fully undertake a project that they want to undertake. So we may support them with feasibility studies or capacity building, depending on which areas they're looking at, or indeed project preparation assessment. So essentially, when we are going to engage with the private sector in any country, these are the avenues which we use to foster that engagement. We can move to the next slide. The next slide, please. Good, thank you. So the next slide, sorry, the previous one, apologies. So the next slide shows us the eligibility criteria. This basically says, gives out, for one to be able to access any of these financial products and non-financial products that we have listed below, this enterprise firstly must be incorporated within a regional member country, meaning it must be incorporated within an African country. In this case, if our colleagues from Italy are coming to invest in Zambia, they will need to establish their enterprise and register it in Zambia. And then the second criteria we look at is that the enterprise must be majority owned by the private sector. So we will not use this financing window to finance enterprises which are publicly owned. However, unless we are convinced that those enterprises are autonomous of and free and managerial free from the public public sector, sorry, then we would. But predominantly in this case, we are looking at the Italian private sector, so that they will definitely pass that criteria. And then we also look at the project must be commercially viable with long-term financial sustainability. So for us to be comfortable, we will carry out a detailed due diligence to see how commercially viable these projects are, and even after the lending from the bank or other institutions, whether this project is financially sustainable. The fourth criteria was the sponsor company must have, whatever they're coming to do here, they must show us that they are competent in it and they have done it before, or that is what they're currently doing. So obviously, if you're coming to set up a water equipment manufacturing plant, you will obviously demonstrate to us that that is what you have been engaged in. The fifth criteria looks at the company must be in good standing. Obviously, we will not deal with a company that has been barred in a member state or has been barred by the World Bank or other DFIs from participating in their financing. So it must be in good standing. And then the project, the sponsor, the company that wants to invest must demonstrate their capacity for environmental and social responsibility. I think this is very important in modern times. The environmental and social aspects must always be respected. And then the seventh criteria is that we always look at development impact. So as the company is coming in to invest, how will it help create jobs? How will it help contribute to government revenues? How will it help to contribute to the foreign exchange and private sector development? So all that needs to be demonstrated. And lastly, one of our criteria which we follow is that the bank only provides up to a maximum of 1/3 of the total project cost. That is if we're looking at a typical project finance financing. However, when we're looking at a corporate loan, the bank will provide up to 50% of the shareholders' equity as the value of the loan, would not exceed that. So basically, as we engage with colleagues from the Italian private sector, it is very important for you to have a clear understanding of our eligibility criteria so that we don't take too long in pushing for the engagement. The next slide, please. So if you do meet our application, our eligibility criteria, and you want to apply, we ask you to submit a preliminary application, which will include the description of the project that you're looking for to finance, to look at the sponsors or the fund manager's biography, your governance structures, your management team structures. We want to know the cost and financing plan, including amounts that you need from the bank, bearing in mind that we say we can only finance 1/3 We want to see how you cover the other gap. We always expect the sponsor to put in at least 1/3 into the project. We also want to have the sponsor share with us the key technical and environmental features and feasibility indicators. A business climate and market prospects is very important for us to have that. And then an implementation plan, including where you are, if you require licenses, permits, or certificates, especially when we're looking at these areas like agriculture and energy, you obviously need to have the ZEMA, the WAMA, and so forth. So we want to have an understanding that
Mr. Sakala, sorry, you have 1 minute left.
Okay, and I'm finishing.
Mr. Sakala, sorry, you only have 1 minute left. Thank you, sorry.
Okay, I'll conclude. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So if you look at what the bank invests in, we invest in agriculture and agro industries, financial institutions, industrial services, health and education, and infrastructure. So you went ahead, but it's fine. So basically, those are the industries we invest in. The others on the slide, if you can go to the last slide, please. Last slide. Okay. Again, next. So the last slide basically gives us, if you want to get in touch with us, those are our contact details. I will encourage the event organizers to share my email address with each of the participants in this meeting, so that in addition to writing the private sector help desk of the bank, you can copy me in for easier follow-up of any opportunities that you want to engage the bank. With those, I thank you very much for your attention and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sakala. I ask all the speakers to respect the limit of 15 minutes, please, for each speech. Now I introduce Mr. Francesco Tilli of CIMEST, Chief of the External Relations Officer. Please, Mr. Tilli.
Thank you so much. First of all, Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers and guests, let me address to you my warmest welcome. Few minutes to try to explain how how CIMEST can support the Italian and Zambian companies establishing new business. I prefer to share directly my slides so I can manage easier the presentation if it's not a problem for the Regia. No problem. We can go through the presentation very fast. Please, the next. Thank you. Fine. The next one again. Thank you. So, few words. CIMEST was established in 1990, but starting from 2012, we are a part of CDP Group. Cassa Depositi e Prestiti is the national promotion institution of Italy, and together with SACE, CIMEST support Italian companies in their process of internationalization. Of course, starting from the beginning of 2020, CIMEST is under the control, the political and strategic control of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Italy. The next one, please. Again, the next one. The seventh, thank you. CIMEST up to now cooperate with SACE and all the CDP group, but our main target is to support Italian companies, particularly small and medium companies, in their internationalization outside the European Union. And we accompany our business and our companies with 3 lines of activity. First of all, soft loans that we manage on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That means that Italian companies can apply for these soft loans in which CIMEST provide directly soft loans to the companies, and also a part of grants coming from the Italian state budget to develop their first phases of the internationalization, from the participation of physical and digital international fairs to the building up of the new commercial branch outside the European Union, to the possibility to obtain temporary export manager and digital export manager, the possibility to establish a new e-commerce site, B2B or B2C, and anything sort of the activities that an Italian companies needs to explore new business and new opportunity of establishing in third countries. Also the possibility, of course, to realize feasibility studies in order to analyze deeply the legal and local framework if an Italian company want to establish in a third country. The second line that will operate starting for our for 1990s to be minority shareholders in venture established outside the European Union. And of course, the first phase, the best practice to establish equity investment is to involve not only an Italian industrial company, but also a local one. Siemens become a minority shareholder, a reputational stakeholder, a financial stakeholder, but of course we are not involved directly in the managing of the company. We provide the soft loans and equity shares up to 8 years of investment. We operate only as an advisor, a reputational and strategic advisor in the framework of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And at the end of this period, we sell back our shares to the Italian company, and we are proud to invest it with the same companies in other parts of the world. The third line is to support export credit. That means that an Italian producer of machinery and industrial goods can easily sell to an international company that want to buy from the Italian industrial sector on a base of at least 24 months of delay, the possibility for the local partner to pay back the machinery and equipments in a very easy way, but in a long term, starting from 24 months up to 15 years. We are discussing about particular particular industrial complex. On the other side, the Italian company, through us and through the Italian banking system, can receive up to now, in the same moment in which they sell the machinery, all the amount, because the banking system at Siemens, through the national budget and specific granting support this difference between the selling for cash and the selling on a medium term. We can share the next 3 slides very quickly, just to fix what I've just done. Yeah, thank you. So you can see up to the next 3rd of January, sorry, the 3rd of June, the previous one, please. We will allow again to receive application form from the Italian companies for all of this business that we can try to support, both with soft loans and granting from the state budget. And of course, Zambia would be one of the best solutions for the southern part of Africa to establish new ventures, also in terms of the commercial business. The next one, thank you. Fine, you can easily see what I've just done. We become in the equity investment abroad a minority partner, equity partner, together with the Italian company. Of course, this example is only a foreign direct investment. It's the same scheme. If we imagine to have a local partner, and in this case, if there is a local partner, it seems that reduce our share, direct equity investor from our own capital, venture capital fund managed on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And as I said just before, we support also Italian companies granting from the Italian banking system equity loan to invest directly in the local company. As I just said, we still remain at maximum up to 8 years, and at the end of this period, we sell back to the Italian partner what we have invested in the local company. The next one. Thank you. Just a few words about the contribution of supplier credit and buyer credit. Buyer credit is, of course, devoted to the huge amount, if we are discussing about the industrial complex, despite the fact that supplier credit operate only for small and medium-sized selling of machinery and industrial goods. As you can see, I've just said that the Italian exporter can obtain an extension for the payment and discount debt security at the market rate, but Siemens paid the difference in advance in terms of interest rate contribution, despite the fact that the buyer has just paid on a long period starting, as I just said, more than 24 months. I thank you, all of you, for your attention. Of course, I remain at your disposal for the next questions that could be come from the guests. Thank you. So again, I leave you the floor, of course.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tilly. And now we have our last speech from ZDA, Zambia Development Agency. I ask Mr. Mukula Makasa, General Director, Mr. Albert Olowampa, Director Export Development, and Mrs. Teresa Chula, Acting Director Investment. Please, the stage is yours.
Buongiorno. Good morning, everyone. My task this morning is just to briefly talk about ZDA, and then my two colleagues will delve into the technical details of our submission. And so the Zambia Development Agency is a public institution established by the government.
We don't see the screen. I'm sorry, we don't see you on stage. I asked if the technical people down in Lusaka can share the screen. Thank you.
Okay. And so the institution was established in the year 2006 under an act of parliament with number 11, with an objective of promoting trade and investment and fostering establishment, development and growth of local business enterprises, which includes micro, small and medium enterprises, smallholder farmers and cooperatives. And we actually demonstrate that, or rather discharge our functions by undertaking capacity building, fostering business linkages, which includes both backward and forward, and also facilitating access to finance. At this point, I would like to invite my colleague Albert to come and quickly make his contribution, or rather Jessica Chombo, who is, just a point of correction, is our Director for Investment. Jessica, please come through and just make sure that your submission is very precise. We have to finish by 12:30.
Thank you very much. I'm going to run through the ZDA presentation under 4 minutes. Yes, so that's the presentation. I'm Jessica Chombo, Director for Investments at the ZDA. I'll briefly talk about the mandate for the agency and Zambia at a glance, cover the markets and business reforms, as well as priority sectors and investment opportunities, tax incentives, and why invest in Zambia, to be very brief. Next slide. Of course, this has been covered, our mandate has been covered by our Director General. Zambia at a glance, of course, that is our population, 18 million plus people. We are surrounded by 8 neighboring countries, giving us a huge market. And we've got a landmass, before slide, a landmass of 752,000 square kilometers. That's our information rate. And
the GDP. Next slide. Our markets, of course, we are members of COMESA, SADC, and the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, giving us a huge market for any investors who are coming in the country. Next slide. Our business reforms, the country has been undertaking a number of our business reforms. Ease of doing business, the World Bank 2020, we were number 85th in the world, and 4th in SADC and COMESA, and 60th in Sub-Saharan Africa. Doing business, World Bank 2019, we were one part of the top 10 globally and top 5 in Africa. Economies showing most notable improvement in doing business. Next slide. Our priority sectors in the country, covering tourism, manufacturing, agro-processing, energy, and infrastructure. Next slide. On this slide, I'm not going to delve so much because it has been adequately covered by Mr. Kalaluka, who covered most of the opportunities in the agricultural sector. But suffice to say, the agency is profiling specific projects in the agricultural sector and various and other priority sectors. And we have projects which have already been profiled and packaged for tomato processing plant, for mango processing plant, cashew nut processing plant, fertilizer plant, and we're still continuing profiling these opportunities. So we can skip the slides in agricultural sector because they've already been adequately covered by Mr. Kalaluka, who was making a presentation before. We can quickly run through. Manufacturing, of course, it is value addition. The emphasis is value addition. The country is undertaking diversification strategy. I heard a presentation by Maruchi on copper dependency. So we have got the diversification program. And on this, the emphasis is to add value to agro products as well as mineral products. We can proceed. Next slide. The energy sector, also, we have a number of opportunities in the energy sector. Demand for electricity in 2021, this is expected to exceed 2,500 megawatts. And there are a number of investment opportunities in the energy projects, several power plants and the mini hydro power plants, which are also in the pipelines. Investors from Italy as well as domestic investors are welcome to invest in those projects. We can proceed. Next slide. Of course, we have got opportunities, various opportunities, also investment opportunities in the tourism sector. Next slide. There are a number of flagship lodges that are being packaged for investment on most of our water bodies and lakes, and a number of 4-star, 5-star hotels in each province, as well as some lodges in most of our national parks. We can go to the next slide. There are also opportunities in infrastructure development in line with the National Development Plan as well as the Vision 2030. There are opportunities in public-private projects and various infrastructure developments in a number of areas, grain storage facilities, road projects, housing units, multi-facility economic zones, and schools, colleges, and a number of construction projects. We can go to the next slide. This is a continuation of the infrastructure opportunities, development of transport corridors. We have the Dar es Salaam corridor and various other corridors connecting us to our neighboring countries. We can go to the next slide. Multi-facility economic zones, we have a number of opportunities in the development of multi-facility economic zones, as well as looking for investors to invest in the multi-facility economic zones. So we have 4 multi-facility economic zones operational and 2 industrial parks. And to be set up, we have a number of economic zones that are in the pipeline. We can go to the next slide. Okay, those are tax incentives that the country is offering. Of course, there are incentives for manufacturing energy, accelerated depreciation for capital expenditures, plus a 0% duty rate on imported capital. In the agricultural sector, we have a tax, corporate tax at 10% plus zero duty rate on capital equipment and a number of other tax incentives. In addition, the country is offering non-tax incentives. That includes free facilitation of acquisition of secondary licenses and a number of support in terms of investor facilitation services. We can proceed to the next slide. Why should we invest in Zambia? This was very much covered by Marucci, the first presenter. I saw our slide on the 10 reasons why you should invest in Zambia. So this was covered really stable political economy, macroeconomic fundamentals, stable and active investment incentives, as well as investment guarantees. Your investments are guaranteed as you come to invest in the country. Next slide. Okay, at this juncture, as my colleague is coming to cover the trade, I just want to say that on the first presentation, I saw a talk on weaknesses, and the landlocked was presented as a weakness. I just want to say that for Zambia, we are saying that we are land linked. So that is a good advantage to us and gives you an opportunity to the wider regional markets. And my colleague will continue with the presentation on trade between Zambia and Italy. I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for that wonderful presentation. Next slide. Yeah, so basically that's the trade pattern for Zambia. Generally is 80% copper, 20% non-traditional exports. So that's what we are struggling to change as a country. And that's the reason we're here. Next slide. So you can see the trade pattern between Italy and Zambia, of course, favoring Italy. But the reason we are here is that we should be able to export more into Italy going forward. Next slide. So basically you can see the trade balance favoring Italy, but of course this is mutual trade. So there will always be one of the two exporting more than the other. It's an international pattern, not to worry about it, Your Excellency. Next slide. Yeah, so those are some of the products which are actually being exported into Italy, raw hides and so on and so forth, machinery. Just next slide. Basically, we see that there could be more products that we can export into Italy, many agricultural products. And I believe that this platform is a conduit to that. And Your Excellency, I'm happy that the Italian Trade Agency is using 365 platform, which we would love to use from henceforth, not just today. I think from today, let's have meetings on how ZDA can actually capitalize. On a monthly basis, we'll bring you companies from all sectors so that they link with our colleagues in Italy so that we increase trade between Zambia and Italy. Next. Yeah, so that's the range of products imported from Italy. Next. So in terms of export, I mean, taxes, incentives, there are quite a lot of them. Yeah, you can talk of duty drawback. If you are buying products to produce an export product, then you'll be refunded that duty to whatever value. ZRA uses a certain ratio. There's also VAT Rule 18, which is zero VAT rated tax, meaning that any VAT that you spend on producing an export product, you'll be refunded that duty. There's also, if you are exporting agricultural products, that is non-traditional products and farming related, the tax is only 10%. And other non-traditional exports is 15%. So you can see that you can come from Italy, invest in Zambia, and then you have all these advantages in terms of reduced tax as compared to other sectors. Next. Yeah, thanks so much. So going forward, I am so positive we'll have results in terms of trade actualization and investment. But for me, going forward is to make sure that we synergize on the 365 platform. It's a beautiful e-commerce platform. And I can see that the ambassador is willing to just make sure that this platform is not just used today, but for many, many years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I asked to the ambassador to go to the stage for the speech of the Undersecretary, please. And I remember all two participants that the section question section will start after the speech of the Undersecretary. Please, Ambassador, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Antonella. We reach an important, very important moment of our program, of our event today. I am really honored to welcome with us our Undersecretary for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Honorable Manlio Di Stefano. Onorevole, benvenuto.
Buongiorno a tutti. Hello, everyone.
It's a great pleasure to have you here with us. We have been working this morning with the Minister of Commerce of Zambia, who is sending you his regards, with Italian and Zambian companies, and the Italian Trade Agency. As I said, the Honorable Undersecretary, it's a great honor to have you here. Your presence confirms how much the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Italian government, is willing to support the Italian companies in Africa, in Zambia, at a global level. Today is very important because, Honorable Undersecretary, we have more than 120 Italian companies that will meet on the Italian Trade Agency platform with more than 30 Zambian companies. So it's a very concrete event. I'm really glad to welcome you here. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure for me to be here today. I'm very pleased to address this country presentation, Doing Business in Zambia, focused on the business opportunities that Zambia offers to Italian companies. I'm very pleased of the high number of companies that are attending today. And so first of all, please allow me to thank the organizers, the Italian Embassy in Lusaka, the Italian Trade Agency, the Zambia Development Agency, and the Zambian Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry. I wish to convey my warmest greetings to the Minister of Commerce, Honorable Christopher Boualia Yaluma, and thank him for his presence today, which represents a tangible sign of the support of the Zambian government to this important initiative, which contributes to the enhancement of our bilateral partnership. I would also like to thank the Ambassador of Italy to Zambia, Antonino Maggiore, the President of the Italian Trade Agency, Carlo Ferro, and the President of the Zambia Development Agency, Bishop David Musonda Masupa. Italy and Zambia share a long-lasting history of friendship and economic cooperation, which dates long before Zambia's independence in '64. People do remember past accomplishments, such as the construction of the Kariba Dam in the 1950s, now annually generating more than 10 gigawatts hour of electricity, or the development of the Zambia Airways airline with the support of Alitalia. More recently, important contracts were signed, such as those concerning the solar plant by Enel Green Power in Ngoye Falls, and the supply of 2 Leonardo aircrafts. In spite of the present difficulties that Zambia is facing, looking ahead, our presence today shows our determination to powerfully react to the current challenging times by strengthening our dialogue and cooperation. Indeed, in these challenging times of pandemic affecting international trade worldwide, politics and institutions have the duty and responsibility to look beyond and to pave the way for new sustainable economic growth. We should lead and support our businesses to strengthen trade and open up opportunities for our peoples. This growth will be resilient only if it is embraced a bottom-up approach directly involving SMEs and startups. With the aim to foster Italian export worldwide, the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation has launched the so-called Patto per l'Export, Export Pact, an ambitious plan to boost international trade cooperation. It offers a complete strategy along 6 guidelines: communication, integrated promotion, training and information, trade fairs, e-commerce, and public finance. In the case of Zambia, we want to leverage synergies to boost our economic relations in the framework of an equal, mutually beneficial partnership. Italy and Zambia have much to share in the field of economic development, trade, and business, but also in culture and values. By sharing our skills and our knowledge, our resources, we can grow together, strengthening even more our economic ties in the many sectors of the Zambian market, which offers lots of opportunities, often unexplored, for Italian companies. Bilateral trade exchange between Italy and Zambia shows a steadily growing trend since 2016. Despite the pandemic, the Zambian GDP is expected to grow by 3.2% in 2021. The level of our total exchange trade, 44 million euros in 2019, is also a starting point that we need to improve. The Italian Trade Agency and the Zambia Development Agency have shown how deep are the opportunities of synergy and cooperation between the companies of the two countries, which have been at the center of several bilateral events such as Trash Project or circular economy and waste management, the webinar on agriculture held in cooperation with McFruit, the Zambia country presentation hosted by Confindustria Africa Mediterraneo. Today, we will focus on 3 promising sectors for our bilateral exchange: agro-industry, energy, and wastewater management. We have a great chance to increase and diversify agriculture production, starting by modernizing the industry with the help of the Italian expertise. In the energy sector, in the renewable sources, Italian companies will be ready to play their part in the electrification process of the country. In the wastewater management, Zambia has adopted guidelines for the protection of the environment, and there are concrete opportunities for our companies to work together and find innovative solutions to improve the quality of life. These sectors are part of the priorities of the G20 Italian presidency, focusing on people, planet, and prosperity. The COP26 Italian co-presidency, as well as the Italy-Africa Conference Incontri con l'Africa, meetings with Africa, scheduled next October in Rome. Our common goal is to pursue prosperity through a better distribution of opportunities for all, tackling inequality, empowering women, supporting precarious workers, small and medium enterprises, and the world's most vulnerable areas. We believe we can build a solid partnership between Italy and Zambia, 2 countries with SMEs and startups constituting the backbone of both our economies. Today's events offer specific opportunities to 30 Italian companies and 30 Zambian companies, previously selected and matched, that will meet in one-on-one B2B meetings through Fiera Smart 365, a digital platform created by the Italian Trade Agency. I'm confident that today's B2B meetings will contribute to the strengthening of our economic relations, creating employment and development through the mutual cooperation. I hope to have soon the opportunity to visit the beautiful country of Zambia and meet you in person. Thank you for your attention. I wish you a fruitful interaction also with the B2B meetings.
Thank you, Undersecretary Di Stefano, for your presence here today. Now I inform you that we close the technical section and we can start the Q&A section. The first is for Mr. Kachinga. Regarding the energy sector, are any feed-in tariff expeded from the government for development of solar parks? It's for Mr. Piri, Pachinga Piri. Mr. Piri, are you heard it?
Do I respond? Yes. Is it fine here? Good. Sorry, can you hear me? Okay, closer. There we go. Antonella, can you just confirm that you can hear me?
The question is, regarding the energy sector, are any feed-in tariff expected from the government for development of solar parks?
Yes, thank you, Antonella. I got the question. I just wanted your confirmation that you would hear me. But in response,
please proceed.
Thank you. In 2017, the government of Zambia developed the refit strategy, which was basically a strategy aimed at procuring renewable energy technologies. These included hydro, some wind, and some solar. And in 2019, the government, in collaboration with KfW, established a Get Fit Solar program, which was a procurement program for renewable energy technologies. And the framework was such that the government did not necessarily set what the feed-in tariffs would be, but allowed the market to compete and participate. And through that process in 2019, they procured 120 megawatts of solar PV capacity, which is intended to supply power to the national utility. As we understand, the preferred bidders have not yet achieved commercial close or financial close. In terms of next rounds of procurement, the government had also, through Industrial Development Corporation, set up a procurement mechanism called Scaling Solar. Our Ngonya plant was procured under the first round of the Scaling Solar. It was the intention to have a second round or second phase of procurement of up to 250 megawatts, I think, of solar PV. However, this has not taken place yet. As we understand, the key parties in this process, which were the government, through the Ministry of Finance, ZESCO as the off-taker, and then the IFC did not or have not yet agreed on some key risk mitigation or risk sharing solutions for the second phase. And until that is done, the second phase will not be initiated. So these were the two key procurement vehicles for renewable energies and solar in particular. It was the Get Fit Solar, which procured 120 megawatts in 2019, and the Scaling Solar phase 1, which procured our project as well as another project, and phase 2, which has not taken place yet. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Piri. Sorry, Mr. Piri, there is another one for you. I asked Mr. Piri on the microphone. The question is,
yes, I can see the question. Is this the question?
Same, the latest question. Is there any public-private project, is WTO, FES, etc., regarding solar parks in Zambia, and how normally the state grants the land, right of superficies, rent, etc.?
Okay, so frameworks that I talked about, there is currently no procurement program run by the government where they are seeking to procure solar PV. There is a private entity that has entered the market now called Africa Greenco, and they intend to position themselves as a creditworthy alternative off-taker to ZESCO, and they are currently running with a procurement program for up to 40 megawatts of solar PV. Now, the intention with Africa Greenco is they want to buy from developers and then on sale to customers that they select by themselves. In terms of securing of land, it depends on the program. With the scale of solar, which I said was run by IDC, which is a government vehicle in collaboration with the IFC, World Bank Wing. In that program, they secured the land, and so it was not the responsibility of developers to secure the land. Under the Get Fit, however, it was different. Each developer had to secure their own land. However, what the government and the Get Fit program managers had done is they worked with the national utility in identifying the points at the grid that were ideal for connection. So all the key substations that had available capacity for developers to connect to the grid, those were made available to potential developers, but it was the responsibility of developers to secure their land. So it's up to them to decide whether they buy that land or they enter into a lease agreement, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Piri. The third question is for Mrs. Pamela Muela Chisanga. Is there a chance to get in touch with the most important engineering and construction companies working in the sanitation sector?
So yes, there is a chance we can provide details. There is actually an association of construction companies and engineers working in the water and sanitation sector. So we can be able to provide these contacts. Thank you.
Please don't go away. There is another question for you. Please stay close to the microphone. Thanks.
The second question is for Mr. Chisanga is, you said that the institutions are weak, but on the same time, the need of sanitation projects is supposed to be public. Is there any private sector initiative to develop the sanitation in Zambia, or how do you think the government will be able to solve and boost these needs?
Okay, so in terms of providing sanitation services, ideally, these are supposed to be delivered by the commercial utilities, but the commercial utilities currently do not have the capacity to be able to deliver sanitation services, especially in peri-urban and rural areas. Some of the challenges include the nature of settlement patterns. So for instance, a number of peri-urban areas in Lusaka, because they are informal settlements unplanned, it's very difficult for the commercial utilities to go in and put in sewer lines and water networks and things like that. So it is for that reason that the commercial utilities partner with other small private sector organizations to try and provide alternative services in these areas. So yes, in as much as government through the commercial utilities is supposed to provide this service, we also recognize that there is a need for consumers to pay for this service. And so, like I said in the presentation, part of the challenge is the fact that many people are not able to pay fully for the service. But I think one of the things that we have been able to see is that if the payments are broken down, a number of consumers are willing to pay for these services. So there are quite a number of small construction companies that are working in the sanitation space. to provide a number or variety of services, things like fecal sludge management, to empty sanitation facilities, especially the pit latrines in the peri-urban areas. We have a lot of small-scale private sector actors like that. So I think one of the things that we're also looking forward to as a country is to move away from on-site sanitation, because we realize that it is a threat to groundwater. So we are looking at opportunities to have systems like sewer lines where we can be able to transport the waste to places where it can be treated and disposed of safely. Thank you.
Yes, this is also for you. Thanks.
Mrs. Chisanga, there is another one question for you.
Yes.
Regarding clean water supply and sanitation, is there any public program in place to avoid water leakages on the existing and future water pipelines?
Okay, so in fact, this is one of the key challenges that we have in Zambia in terms of water supply. For many commercial utilities in the country, non-revenue water or water lost due to leakages, in some cases, is as high as 50 or 55%. In Lusaka, for instance, where we are, non-revenue water is about 40%, meaning that only 60% of the water that is supposed to be supplied to consumers ends up being supplied. The 40% is lost due to leakages. There are a number of initiatives that are trying to address this, but this is an area, again, where I see opportunities, because a lot of organizations are coming in to try and look at how they can support commercial utilities to address non-revenue water. So at the moment, there are small initiatives with a number of utilities to do this, but this is an area, like I have said, where there is opportunity, because a lot of the commercial utilities are looking at addressing non-revenue water. And this is one of the key performance indicators for the commercial utilities to address leakages under non-revenue water. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chisanga. The last is for I think that as an Italian trade agency, we can answer for these. The question is, I'd like to know if there is a chance to get in touch with the most important construction. This was an old question. Okay. I would like, if in the audience there are someone who wanted to ask a question to our speakers, we can go to the microphone, and so we ask the question. Please ask to whom you want to ask the question. Please, the stage is yours.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there is one last question from Gabo Solution Next Services. And this is for the gentleman of Enel, I guess. So it's just to make some comparison about energy power cost. How much is the cost per kilowatt for homes and for business places?
Sorry, I lost you there, but I can see the question here. I think just to say that the framework of the approach for pricing here might be a little different with what is like in Italy. So we generally have two categories of customers. We have what we call regulated customers, and these are customers who do not have individual power supply contracts with the national utility. And these will have their tariff set in kwacha, the local currency, And before the utility, in this case ZESCO, is able to adjust these tariffs, they will have to make an application to the regulator, who would then review the application, allow for a public participation process, and then make a decision. For those customers, in my slide, I had a tariff averaging 7.4 US cents per kilowatt hour. Now that is just an average for all customers in that category, which would include residential, small commercial, and industrial customers, customers providing services such as schools, hospitals, etc. When you average out what they're currently paying in quarter terms based on exchange rate as of last year, it would average out to about 7.4. Large private customers, on the other hand, and these are customers who generally consume above 10 megawatts, tend to be supplied under a long-term power contract called a PPA. And for most of these customers, in fact, for all of them, that rate would be a US dollar-based rate and not a kwacha-based rate. It would be varied, but as of the last 2 years, ZESCO has been trying to benchmark on a tariff averaging about 9 cents for these kinds of customers. So yeah, one would say 7.4 for retail customers and US 9 cents for large PPA customers, and these are generally customers consuming above 10 megawatts. As I said, it's 7.4 for the retails because it's kwacha-based, and because of the depreciation of the kwacha over the last 2 years, a significant depreciation, it is lower than 9. Otherwise, it would be significantly higher.
Thank you, Mr. Piri. We don't have any more new questions. Please.
Introductions first.
Sorry, we don't hear anything.
And basically my question is relating to the trade balance between Zambia and Italy. My question comes from the numbers that we were given for 2019, where we've got 58 million, you can correct me if I'm wrong with that, 58 million in favor of Italy. And then we've got about $11 million Zambia's exports to Italy. I wanted to ask a question, first of all, to our Zambian Development Agency in terms of what are the core products. I think we were given a list. Which are the core products or services that are being exported to Italy? And then what sort of interventions can be done to close the gap or even go above the $59 million that is in favor of Italy? And then secondly, to the Italian trade agency, if you look at the trade numbers that are being done with other similar African countries, I'm talking of Ghana, I'm talking of Kenya, we also saw some numbers for South Africa. And what sort of challenges are Italian businesses facing when it comes to importing products from Zambia or from the Zambian businesses exporting to Italy? And then the second right to that question is what sort of ambition should we set? Because when we look at $59 million relative to what is happening, I think the numbers, we could do better looking at the sizes of the two economies. So what sort of interventions can be done to grow that number maybe to 500, 200 million, 500 million, such numbers that can then have an impact on the economies for the two countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much. You able to hear me, Antonio?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think as we showed, some of the major products that are going into Italy include leather products such as hides, you have agricultural products such as cotton, you have precious stones and others. The difference between the 58 million and around 11 million, when you look at trade into perspective, it's still low on both sides, because I know that we could do much better, whether it's on the Italian side or on the Zambian side. So the reason why we're here is trying to narrow that trade balance, not within the margins of 58 or 11, but to do more. For example, Zambia would like to export maybe up to even $100 million of products into Italy. Equally, Italy would want to go beyond 58 million. So I think what is important is to put strategies in place, such as what we are doing today, to scale up the interaction between, exporters, importers on a reciprocal basis, taking to advantage the Cotonou Agreement, where we can export duty-free, quota-free. So we hope that going forward, we can actually scale up these activities. And these include trade fairs into Italy, trade fairs into Zambia by Italian companies, also trade missions where you simply organize companies from Zambia in specific sectors, take them to Italy, meet select sectors working with ZT and Italian. We scale up and increase the frequency of interaction depending on comparative advantages between the two countries. So I think this is a good start. Our board chair did mention, and also His Excellency Antonino, about March Fruit trade fair. This is one of the platforms. If you go there, you see fruits like avocados, the paprika, the moringa being promoted, and because of that, you can see a lot of women planting a lot of thousands of acres. But we want to scale up, encourage more, bring in more cooperatives, bring in more SMEs, see which large companies can scale up and move into Italy, and Italy can do vice versa. So I think what we are doing here is a start, a good start, and we can scale up and increase the frequency. It's a long overall program. It cannot be done in 1 year or so, but I think we have started with a long vision. We'll get those big numbers, which everyone would like to see.
Regarding the second question, I wanted to give this information. The Italian companies are ready to help the Zambian companies to start business opportunities. And also at the first commercial moment, they are ready to start more presence, to increase their presence into the country. So we can consider, they can consider to realize an investment, a fixed investment, to realize the joint ventures, of course. And the possibility, of course, depends on the local regulations. And in this moment, obviously, all the government of the African countries are very interested in improve the growth of their economy. So I think that we can find many items where the Italian companies can grow, they can create a possibility of business with Zambian or other African countries companies. In particular, I wanted to remember that many Italian companies which are producer of machineries and components are very high level, and in general they can share this they put this technology to connect with the other entrepreneurs and create a new possibility of business.
Antonella, there is a couple of more questions from Italian companies for some of our Zambian friends. I would like to share them. This is for the ZDA.
For the ZDA agency, the Italian companies are producing agrochemicals and solutions for crop protection. They are keen to expand their sales in Zambia as well. Which kind of support of your agency, so ITA, can provide the ZDA can provide us to enter in contact with national distributors that could be interested to import their solutions?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. Yeah, definitely. We encourage so many models of coming into Zambia. You may come to invest or partner with the local in terms of partnerships or ventures to bring your already made products and distribute in Zambia. So the Zambia Development Agency can facilitate so that depending on the area of your interest and what you are producing, we can facilitate the partnership between the Zambian company and yourselves, so that you can create either you create a 100% company, or you can partner with a Zambian who is in that sector and be able to set up in Zambia, and we should be able to facilitate your products coming into Zambia and be able to distribute to the entire country. You may distribute within Zambia, or because of that distribution that is set up, you can re-export into neighboring countries. As you heard the presentation, we are surrounded by 8 neighbors. So Zambia is a hub where you can bring in your products and be able to export to markets like Congo, DR, Angola, Zimbabwe, and the like. So we would be able to facilitate as ZDA, as long as you communicate to us, tell us what your products are. We should be able to discuss with you which model you want to come into Zambia. You want to set up 100%, but of course, as an agency of government, would love that you come in and go into joint ventures with Zambians, go into partnerships with Zambians. I think that will be a win-win situation between the Zambian companies and Italian companies, and even between our people in terms of creating wealth and creation. So get in touch with us. We should be able to fast track and facilitate your movement into Zambia, whether you are importing, exporting directly or already finished products. We should be able to actually link up to all government institutions, whether it's the immigration or the Zambia Revenue Authority or any other institutions. ZDA is the place to land it. Thanks.
I would like to inform our you that the B2B section is started, but we can continue. So the Zambian companies which have to start the meetings can go to the room, but in the same time we can continue to have the question and answer section. This is a question for the ZDA, and it's possible to have a list of major crop fruit growers and exporters in Zambia. And what about a list of agricultural dealers and distributors for agricultural equipments?
Yes, it's very possible. We should be able to provide that list of exporters in those subsectors. We should be able to provide the list of equipment dealers. Will be able to link up with the Italian embassy and also the Italian trade agents and provide that list so that it could be an ease of reference to either make a decision to invest or to export into Zambia, or create whatever platform you have, whether it's an agency, distribution center, or whatever dynamic that suits your budget. So yes, we provide the list of exporters and also the list of dealers in those specific equipments. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And we have another question for Mr. Piri. Mr. Piri, based on its experience, could provide a detailed, brief introduction of development process for large-scale solar parks in Zambia? Regarding PPA duration, approximate price, explain quickly what permits are needed for construction and how long approximately they will be obtained.
Because we really had to leave, so I think what is possible.
We send this question to Mr. Piri, and so we can send the answer to Teresa Lucchio, who asked the question.
Yes, and I'd like to tell all the companies that are following us online, that are asking questions. I think today is very important because it's the start of a fruitful cooperation between the Italian Trade Agency and the Zambian Development Agency. So I'm sure that all the information, as you said, can be provided also in the next days. We have a question here. I don't know if I can give the floor to the question here.
Sorry, can you we don't have any, I have some problems with the audio, we can't hear you very well.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just saying that all these questions show the great interest in Zambia and in Italy. So today, it's an important day to start the cooperation between the Italian Trade Agency and the Zambia Development Agency. I want to tell the companies that we are here to continue providing all information to their questions, as you said. We have a question here, if I can give the floor to our friend.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sanitation. Mine is not necessarily a question. I was just questioning if you can share the contact details and the presentation for Mr. Karaka, Zambia Prime Minister, and CMS for Mr.
I'm sorry, can you please speak closer to the microphone? The sound is not very clear.
My full name is Sanitation. From Brampton Networks Limited. I was just requesting for the presentation which was done by Mr. Karaka and Mr. Tiri from Cisco Tiri, and the contact details. If it can be shared to our email address.
Sorry, I apologize, but I can't understand anything.
Antonella, do you hear me?
No, yes, but I didn't hear the questions. I don't have any possibility to.
The question was about some contact details and about the presentations, and I confirm that we will provide all this information. You can proceed.
I can see that all the presentation that we have shown today are at your disposal, and we on the website of each Italian Trade Agency. And if some of the companies which are attended today, they can they have some questions, they can send us the email or Johannesburg or its office is Johannesburg at ice.it. And so we can answer, we can send the question to all the speakers, and so they can have the reply by then. For any information, all people can write us. Also, we are to your disposal for any needs. At the moment, I remember that the B2B section is started, and I thanks all of you for participating to this webinar. And the webinar now is over. We all thank the Zambian and the Italian companies that are attended the meeting, and also our speaker, our institutional guests, and all the speakers that are share with us their knowledge. We hope that you have found good information to consider Zambia as one of your next overseas markets. Italian Trade Agency office in Johannesburg remain to your disposal for any question or clarification you need. Please don't forget to fill out the customer satisfaction form that appears automatically when you log out. We thank again. I thank the ambassador. I thank all the guests which are today in this webinar, and I hope to see you again another moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonella. Well done. Thank you.